Antarctica also has some relatively small regions that are clear of any ice and snow, and there's some surface lakes in these areas which were warm enough to swim and fish in. Even the lakes deep below the ice are teeming with life, such as Lake Vostok, the largest Antarctic lake, which does not get any sunlight and may have been isolated for millions of years. The reason is underwater volcanic vents eject minerals which sustain bacteria and plankton, which besides providing food to fish and other organisms, also create oxygen, another life-sustaining element which makes some of the most remote submerged parts of Antarctica theoretically habitable by humans. I say theoretically because of persistent yet officially unproven rumors that have been circulating since the alleged end of World War II that maintain many of the most technologically elite German forces did not surrender to the Allies in 1945, but survived in secret bases below the ice near the South Pole. It's relatively easy for many to dismiss this possibility because of the high degree of censorship, not only of the mainstream media, but also in Hollywood and academia, both of which also are subject to government propaganda in the name of national security. It seems logical that the subject of Antarctica remains largely classified, given the military defeat the Allies suffered in 1946 and 47 while trying to locate and eradicate any surviving colonies established by the Germans. Codenamed Operation High Jump, the United States and several Allied nations sent an armada consisting of 3 aircraft carriers along with support vessels, destroyers, submarines, and 4,500 armed troops led by Admiral Byrd to Neuschwabenland, the name of the Antarctic territory
$1 billion in circulation that shouldn't exist. There was forged money. The code name was Operation Bernhardt. There were expert forgers. And so that this is the kind of money that could finance the operations that they're describing in this book. The prelude to the operations was that the money was available and somebody was making the equipment for these people that this book is writing about and manufacturing secret weapons for the future. Now, this book claims that Hitler planned far ahead to have a colony down in Antarctica. And if you buy the maps put out by National Geographic, 1957, there's a map of Hitler staking in 1939, 1937, his territory in Antarctica. He sent polar expeditions out. This book says the secret Nazi expeditionary force was headed by Captain Richter, R-I-T-S-C-H-E-R, and took place 1937 and 38, their first expeditions. They landed in the Queen Maud Land and established bases there. They took over 11,000 photographs for map purposes and had a swastika flag dropped every 20 kilometers to substantiate the German claim that they had this land in Antarctica. It was a terrain claimed by Germany itself for the first time, and they found warm lakes, an ice-free oasis, and an area, an unexplored area before that they gave German names, the mountains and the plateaus and so forth. It was free of ice, and there were warm lakes in this area, and other books that I have show the drawings. Now, added to the credence to these bases are the remarks of Mr. von Ribbentrop, this book says, at the outbreak of the war, World War II, in accordance with Germany's long-range political strategy, we have taken into firm possession the Antarctic area called the New Swabia, and it will be and ensure a safe retreat in case of necessity, Mr. Ribbentrop said at the beginning of World War II. And this book has maps of the Byrd expedition going down after the war. They said Antarctica would be an Admiral Byrd undertook this with the armed observation camps that were set up because the pole, the South Pole, lies between us and our enemies. And they considered in 1947 the enemies, Germany and the Nazis, that had gone down there during the war and after the war, and that they would be trouble later, and they wanted to find out. These were continuous enemies because they didn't believe the war was over, and they went down there. Further questioning as to who the enemy was asked July 7th in Santiago, Chile, of Admiral Byrd, in quotations from El Mercurio, a newspaper down there. And he said the Axis powers had been only defeated and had unconditionally surrendered, but he really realized that they would rise again, and he had an interview in the paper in Santiago, Chile. It was soon learned that the scientific job, the mission, the task of observing the activities of the foreign power, Nazi Germany, in the South Pole region was part of the activity that Admiral Byrd reported back. He wanted, in quotes, to break the last desperate resistance of Adolf Hitler. In case we find him inside his new Schwabenland in the Queen Maud Land region, we will destroy him. And there's Spanish books out at the time, Hitler está vivo. The United States expedition arrived and landed in Antarctica, and with them the latest in military gear and gadgets. So you see, it was a warfare military operation at that time. This isn't new to the United States or Great Britain. Bases were established and quickly expanded. Now, after they set up their bases and set up their equipment, the instruments went totally haywire. The performance gauges, the altimeters behaved in a most erratic manner, causing Admiral Byrd to abort the flight and return to his base on visual controls. The altimeters weren't working, and he couldn't fly airplanes over there. It has been reported by papers and sources previously mentioned here that Admiral Byrd had located the secret Nazi base and was approaching it when an incident took place, and he was silenced and Forrestal was murdered, was because the United States had the intent, with Reinhard Gehlen, with the Hitler's agents after the war, and the Fritz Kramers and the Nazis that got out, to continue the operations down there and not to stop them. He thought this was hostile region. The planes weren't working, the altimeters weren't working, the planes were going down. The Admiral Byrd, this is Byrd, further stated he didn't want to frighten anyone unduly because it was the bitter reality that in case of a new war, the continental United States would be attacked by flying objects which could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Admiral Byrd repeated the above point of view resulting from his personal knowledge gathered from the North and South Pole that he could have, he said, at a news service, an international news service. During the press conference, the Admiral stated that in a quickly shrinking world, the United States could no longer derive any sense of security from its isolation or the geographic distance from the poles. The Admiral affirmed once again his belief that the entire Antarctic continent should be closely watched and surrounded by a wall of defense installations, since it represented the last line of defense for America. These defense measures, the book goes on to say, have been taken, but we have not had the defense down there, nor has Great Britain, on those islands, while Antarctica and Argentina could build up whatever they want. He warned about this. Admiral Byrd further stated, no one could give a more accurate accounting of the true significance of the situation than he could, since he was there. When Admiral Byrd arrived in the United States and the significance of his findings found their way into the press, he was hospitalized. Now, how often have you seen that happen since 1946-47? No hard information since that time was ever unearthed, since he was interviewed in a 30-year cover-up by brain, or more often by brawn, of the true identity of where UFOs come from, their origins, and they have suppressed the unholy alliance of 1939 to 1945. The only real reason for the UFO cover-up, and this book was written a while back, and don't forget, when this was written, they didn't know that in 1982, of April 1982, the United States Supreme Court said you cannot have information on UFOs. It's national security. Everything on UFOs that you need to know is locked up. And what they wrote in this book on these secret weapons was the real and only reason for the insane UFO cover-up is to be found in the German origin. The Allies in the East and West have told so many lies, and now the Nazis are around, and it would be logical and natural for them to take revenge one day. The book is called Assault on Eternity, written by Leslie Rose, who made an expedition with Admiral Byrd and a participant in the 1956 Antarctic expedition with Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd. This author referred to Byrd as a political admiral who was considered one of the nation's top military explorers, and he died in 1957. 23 years after his death, this Leslie Rose wrote in the book, the access to his papers remains closely guarded by his family. Now, all I have is a book review from the Washington Post. I don't have the book. It's been a long time, a year and a half, but I don't have it yet. The papers of Admiral Byrd are locked up, and this biographer wanted to write a story of Admiral Byrd having gone on an expedition, but discovered that he was forced to cut the plan short when he was denied access to the Admiral's papers. This is somebody who went on an expedition with him in 56, but the 46-47 expedition was covered up. It was called Operation High Jump. It was after the World War II expedition, and that's what led Byrd down to Antarctica. Admiral Byrd had enemies within the service, this author